I can see the record button and you, but I
Great.
can't see myself, which is fucking perfect.
You could probably switch, I think, to gallery view. Maybe it'll, or side by side
No,
gallery. No, okay. You
no, I
don't want to see it.
refuse.
Okay, because I can see you on mine. I'll see you. I'll see you on mine. So,
I'll
um,
see you in hell.
and hell, damn, I guess should I say?
Oh, I
There's
normally don't
another.
go for puns, but it's a plug for me, so I
Sure
like
is. Great. So what we're
it.
gonna do is we're going to kind of break down the scenes that we just did to see what we did, what we were thinking. And again,
Yeah.
it's like I think it's like almost 20 minutes of actual scenes. So if we feel like we got the idea, we can always move to the next scene, or we can see
Ah,
what happens.
scrub it. Yeah, we can do the
So
fast forward. We're both
so
editors.
oh
Let's do the scrub. You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
So I'll also turn it down a little bit. But so this is the suggestion was
Yeah.
hacker. Um, yeah, so this was
Yeah.
hacker.
As I was telling you offline, like I hate things about hacking because it's the most difficult thing to make look interesting in the world. Like all I have to do is say the word swordfish, and everyone goes, "Oh yeah, hacking's
Yeah.
hard."
So this, I believe, was a suggestion that I gave you of not looking at me the whole time. It
Yeah, and I went boom, hand puppet. I just have to like listen real hard.
was great.
I
I'm
wish
gonna.
I did. I know that there are a ton of improvised puppet shows. I know like there was Felt in Chicago, and then God, what's the one with Chris Compton and Colin Lee Turner
Sound and the
and
Furry.
Compton, The Sound of the Fury, yeah. And there's a couple others. Especially like my friends. There's Vincent and Me, which is my boy Mac Duncan in Phoenix. Also, Stacy, my friend Stacy in Phoenix, who is an improviser. Her she is a puppeteer on the Jim Henson on Sesame Street.
Oh wow.
Her daughter is a nonverbal autistic child. My nephew is autistic, so I'm really that's something I'm always like got my radar up for. And she created Sesame Street's first ever nonverbal autistic puppet Muppet, and they developed it with her. They designed it, and she performs it.
Mm,
So we tried to get her to do the Dr. God revival, and she was really into it until she realized that there was no way that the Jim Henson company was going to allow her to fly with a $350,000 puppet.
yeah. Exactly.
So I was
Exactly.
like, oh, yeah. She's like, yeah, they hold on to it and I go to them. And then they hold on to the puppet and I go back to Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I wonder why we don't see more improvised Zoom puppeteering. I know my girl Vanessa Guerrero is doing from Night Church at the Pack is doing some fundraising stuff right now. And I believe her man, it's her and the puppet are doing it together. So go check that out.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's Puppets
All right.
Amok too. But I was gonna say what I noticed
Yeah.
here is it actually looks like my eye line matches where your hand actually is. Um,
It's kind of weird, yeah. It's
I
unsettling.
mean, because I was looking on my screen obviously at where you were, but because it was facing me. But it's actually interesting because sometimes when I'm like doing this, it looks like I'm actually like listen, buddy, listen, whatever this is. So it looks like I'm literally like looking at you. But I also
Yeah.
know what I remember from this scene is you gifted me with something of like cracking the code, and then I gifted you back the idea of being a sidekick that was able to like help me solve it. And I think that was a
Mm-hmm.
fun little bit that we had going on there with those
Yeah, that's
kids.
a, it's yeah, it's a fun part too because I like that because a lot of I one of my things is like I'm big on efficiency in improv. I hate being inefficient in comedy in general, my life in general. So I also don't like arguing on stage. Not only is it against like we figured out a long time ago that conflict and arguing not good improv. I don't know why we keep trying to test that because I keep
Hmm.
seeing a bunch of argument. I know why. It's because UCB Game Style has been like, no, I just call you out. You're the weirdo, and I'm going to keep banging away at that hammer. Uh, I'm not saying anything new. That's not me shit talking. But like that sidekick line, that would have been that would have been a place where a lot of improvisers would have taken that as an opportunity to argue, and I just never do. And that's my sort of thing is where like I leave. right?
Yeah, and I
I will
also
just I
and
I
there
will
you
just lose.
and now you're
Yeah,
back.
I will just lose. I'm like, no, man, I'm no way that I'm your sidekick. Like, I'm not nearly good enough to be even your sidekick, man. Like that to me is always more interesting.
Which
And I also do
I
like I like the idea of me doing the puppet, doing a couple different things of like establishing that this is the talking hand puppet. But then you were saying something to me like I'm doing this kind of stuff, but also like this. Hmm. I was very happy for. I was like,
yeah,
you are for me, and I was like
yeah.
that stuff
Well,
is like we're already blending time and space. That is what I love about improv is people are like there's a certain improv school that shall remain nameless that is like men can only play male characters and women can only play female
mhm,
characters, and I'm like,
yeah.
dude, I like playing robots and dinosaurs and talking hands that can morph into
Mhm.
whatever they fucking need. Get out of here with that nonsense, you know.
Oh yeah, I one of the places I haven't taken classes from. But anyway, what I also loved was this idea of like failing as a character, being like, I don't even think I'm as good as a sidekick. I think I'm more of like the commissioner. And then what was an interesting gift that I felt was, wait a second, the commissioner is literally the mayor of the city. Like he's got all this power. So I think that that was a fun thing that I was able to gift back to you, is like, wait a second, maybe you are kind of like the commissioner because you gave me the power to solve the crime, which is a
Yeah.
different thing than what a sidekick would actually do. So I thought that was a fun uh, thing
No,
with that first scene.
I really appreciated that gift because it was like, oh yeah. I mean, I legitimately had to like pause for a moment because I was like, oh shit. Yeah, like Commissioner Gordon is like the head of the police department. He does all the crimes, right?
Yeah.
Except for these like crazy, like they talk about at the end of Batman Begins, like escalation, right? You show up in a suit, now we're gonna have these crazy guys, and he pulls out the Joker card, right? Like
Hmm.
has the flair for the dramatic, that guy. And if you think about it, like Batman, like when Commissioner Gordon has the power, he turns on the bat signal and Batman comes to him.
Hmm.
Batman doesn't turn on the Commissioner Gordon signal and say, "Come to the Batcave noon," right?
Hmm.
Like it's always just like, "What do you need, Commissioner?" I'm like, "Commissioner." It all that went through my head in like half of a second because of that great gift that you gave me. I was like, "Oh shit! Oh, oh yeah, yeah."
Yeah.
He totally did. And then
He's like setting
then
him
I
up.
just started, yeah. And then I
Yeah.
started like sailing through the whole thing of like, yeah, Commissioner Gordon's daughter was only shot by the Joker because of Batman's dumbass. If he had just
Uh-huh.
put Batman, if he had just put the Joker down, like, hey, thanks a lot for your no killing thing, Batman. I'll go tell my crippled daughter that you have your principles, right? Like
Hmm.
all that went through my head in like a half second. I was like, oh, this scene could only be 2 minutes long. Don't get in your head.
Yeah.
Just just edit it. Just edit it. Just get done with it.
And speaking of edits, we edited and then we went into another scene, which I noticed is a setup
Yeah.
because of your like ability to use a lot of great physicality in your space, where I just kind of choose not to, for not a real purpose. I think I just forget and I'm like, oh, let me just improvise. And so this is the danger I
Yeah.
think of doing Zoom improv, is I'm like, I just want to talk
Hmm.
and listen, as opposed to like feeling like I'm super in the moment. Um,
Yeah.
but
It's like that weird thing of like getting caught on the sideline during an improv show, just getting caught watching because they're your friends and they're being super funny and you like them. You're like, "Huh, oh shit, right. I have to be in the show. It's on Zoom that's like multiplied even more, which what's the first time I did one or first time I saw one where everyone was like, okay, we're all gonna block our cameras while this two-person
mhm,
scene is going on. I was like, oh, that's so fucking smart. That's so
mhm.
smart because because like yeah, you have to have that moment of like, oh, because otherwise you're just gonna be like, oh man, this is so great. I love
Mhm.
improv. Oh, I'm in the scene now. They just called for my doctor character. Shit.
Yeah, and it's also with this scene, what I thought was interesting is your character was all over the place in terms of like thinking he's like all that, but my character buying into like everything he's saying,
Mhm.
going so much as to calling him like the Jesus of electronics, which
Yeah,
is
and that guy and the guy I was playing just rolled with it.
yeah.
Didn't like not even for a second did he go, whoa, that's a bit much. Jesus, he's like, no, yeah, you're right, man, you're right.
And then like pulling in the like, and it's like interesting because like even if you're like not super religious or you're religious or whatever, we all know that like Judas was the one who, you know, betrayed Jesus. So you calling that out right away was great. Of being like, you're not my Judas, right? Nah, you wouldn't
I
be.
love, but honestly, like going back for a second, like I loved your choice of being that guy that's just like totally into it. Because I think one of the great things about improv, and it's also my personal, I think everyone's heard me say dozens of times, like our job is to replicate recognizable human behavior presented on the stage in such a way that the audience recognizes their own humanity and reveals that revelation in the form of laughter, so we can have a longer discussion, deeper transactional ideas on how to heal the world. uh your choice there to be a guy that's just like, oh yeah, totally, man, like you're so into it, you're just rolling it. I think it's very relatable. I think it's the kind of honest laughter that, like, Dale was talking about, when, because we all look at that, we were like, we all go, oh man, there have been so many people I have looked up to, or that I stand for, or I like that were my mentor, and you look back on it now and you go like, God, that person was so full of shit.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? It was like, you were just young. You were just young and dumb, and you hadn't met enough of those people yet. For me, that guy was a guy named John Marzilli. That's straight up. I'm calling him out by name.
Mm.
That guy I looked up to, I hung out with, I thought we were friends, and then one day he just fucking ghosted on me. And then a mutual friend knew, was like, oh yeah, that's what John does. John regales you with all of his Hollywood stories, and then when and soaks in you know uh, your attention and admiration. And when he's run out of stories, he disappears. Because what is going to? But the thing is that he was a recovering alcoholic. I
Mm.
thought he had fallen off the wagon. I thought like he wasn't returning phone calls or that. And then like I saw him later where he showed up at like a theater after party at the bar I was working at, and he was like, "Hey," I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
wow." So yeah, John Marzilli, I'll straight up call him out. That was a fucked up thing you did. So as you're doing that thing there of like, oh yeah, you're like the Jesus of electronica, man. Like I just can't even believe. I was just like, yeah, I've been that guy, and so is a lot of other people. And that is what is great about improv more than any other art form, is that theater does that, movies do that, TV shows do that with characters, obviously screenwriting, but improv is the only one where it's immediate and it's honest and it's vulnerable, where we're not even aware that we're doing it in the moment, and everyone in the audience goes, that's your cousin Dave. I know, right?
Also, what I thought was interesting about this is the Jane Austen as my favorite.
Great move. I can't compliment you about that move enough.
Thanks.
So keep going.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I was going to say the Jane Austen is my favorite. We got there twice. The
Yes.
first time was great because this guy's philosophy is just all over the place, that he can just like kind of throw it in there without anyone being like, that doesn't check out.
Jane Austen would hate him. Read any of her writings. She would hate this dude. Would absolutely be the nerfed dude in any of her books.
He's the cat, as they call it. He's the cat.
Oh yeah. This is some duke that's going to get his comeuppance about 10 pages before the novel's over. 100%.
Yeah, but then the second time it happened was funny because you were making these like references of like, it's not like this, it's like this. And I don't think as Spencer, I understood how the analogy was working, which I was like, this is fine. I'm just going to throw out stuff. But then I was able to throw in the Anne Rice thing, and I didn't even think about it in the relationship to Jane Austen. But then I actually like inadvertently, as we were talking about, like set you up at the tee to hit a perfect swing, to hit a perfect home run. And I inadvertently did that, which I think is also a thing with learning about improv. It's the more I do it, the more these things just click without me like being like, oh, this is a great time for me to do this. It just kind of happens because of the focus and the skills that I've been learning. But I was like the Anne Rice thing. And then you're like, and speaking of Anne Rice, Jane Austen is my favorite. And I was like, oh, and then it made me be like, oh, this guy totally does. Like I kept that character. I was able to keep that character the whole way through because I was like, that's so smart. I didn't even think about it that way. But now this character is now how I actually feel, because those moments of discovery are really nice, of like, oh, I discovered this thing in the moment.
Yeah, Miles and I talk about that all the time. I owe that guy a phone call. I'm gonna FaceTime him with him tomorrow. Wish him a happy holidays. But we talk about that all the time. It's just like, because we're also big basketball nerds as well. It's you if people were like, oh, he was like, no, he's like, you do all of your work. A basketball player, similar to an improviser, does rehearsal, does practice, goes to school, does all. The reason why you do all these things is the same reason a basketball player will go by himself and put up 1,000 jump shots a day by himself in a gym. So when he's in a game, he doesn't have to think about it. And Miles is very much like that. No one thinks about the art form more than the old man. He will sit on his porch and just like and think about improv constantly. And I do a lot of that too. That's why we get along so well. But like once you get on stage, it's just just play. So that thing of like you saying like me, Spencer, in the moment not knowing, but then it just kind of bubbles out. That's again one of the other great things about improv is that what stuff that comes out in the moment is stuff that is almost impossible to write. Like the example I always use, and then Mike Hughes, our good friend, our mutual friend Mike Hughes, will remind me of this from time to time. Dr. God did an online thing for Conan O'Brien once for Team Coco, where we showed up and they were just doing like I think they were doing like a 24-hour for like fundraiser thing, and we came in and pretended to be a short form improv troupe from Diamond Bar just outside Tustin, just outside the Diamond Exchange, like the Improviders or something like that.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
we were doing new. Yeah, it was fun. We all wore our IO softball team, Iowa West Hurricane Hawks shirts. So we were all in the numbered jerseys with our names on the back. Very short form. Very,
That's
very,
awesome.
very short form. Yeah. And at one point we were doing New Choice. And I was in the scene and Sean was calling. He was like, New Choice, Sean Cowig. And out of nowhere, I just said like, New Choice, Helen Reddy. I haven't thought about Helen Reddy in 20 years. And it's blah, right? And then Mike Hughes was watching it at the time, watching it live because he was like, "Oh, my friends are going to be on. I should watch this thing and donate a couple of bucks." And then he talked about it for weeks afterwards. He was like, "Who pulls a Helen Reddy? Who pulls a Helen Reddy reference?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Mike Hughes,
woman,
you
hear me roar."
Yeah,
Literally.
exactly."
That's so.
And the thing is that, and it's a big part of me and Mike Hughes' friendship is that I know a lot when you talk about like I didn't get the reference. Well, hey, you're not alone there, Spencer. Anyone who plays with me is just like BOC. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know any of these references.
And also, what
But
makes
Mike Hughes destroys. That man has forgotten more old television shows than I will ever know. Like I'll find a new one. I found one yesterday from out of Canada. It ran from 2010 to 2015. It was called Rookie Blue. The original title was called Coppers, but they changed it for America because no one knows what coppers are. It should have just been Young Hot Cops Who Are Fucking, right? That's what it is. It ran for 5 years. I was like, I've never heard of this. He was like, but I went down a rabbit hole from the girl that's the lead on FBI. That was one of her first shows.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And he was like, oh, I remember this. It's a cheap summer replacement. I'm like, Mike Hughes, how do you know this? How do you know? Like, if it is ridiculous to me that Mike Hughes is not staffed on a television show for no other reason to just have him in the room and have someone go, well, what if, I don't just spitballing. What if in the next episode, Sarah loses her nursing license and Mike Hughes will be like, oh, you mean how they did it on the original Newhart show? And like, just give them chapter and verse. How that guy's not fucking staffed on the show, I have no idea. For nothing else to just be like, hey, if you're going to do this, this is the right way to do it. He's a walking Simpsons did it. You know what I mean?
That's amazing. This reminds me of, I just took a class the other day and we were doing like monologues before we were doing the Herald. And I don't remember what the suggestion was or whatever. I think it was Jim. And so the suggestion was Jim. And I said, oh, Jim makes me think of my playlist, which makes me think of my obsession with 90s music, especially all the one-hit wonders. And I talked about how everyone thinks Hanson is a one-hit wonder because of the bop, but they actually have two other hits that were in the top 40.
Where's the Love is an objectively better song than Mbop. I'll fight anyone.
But based on the Billboard top 40, they actually have three songs that have charted in the top 40 versus like Blink 182, who has a lot of popular songs, but they actually only had one song that actually was in the top 40. And I think it was at number 40.
Was that What's My Age Again? Or
All the Small Things.
All the Small Things. I was like,
yeah.
Honestly, like I'm not a big fan of that band, but like I do have, when I like something, I'm a sucker for a good pop song, but when I like something, I really like something. Stay Together for the Kids?
Yeah,
That song is incredible. Because I'm also a musician. I'm a songwriter. So when you get to like the dun 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 dun, dun so here's your holiday, like their voices always do a good blend. That's why that band is so big, is because individually they are not the best singers. Like they don't have the greatest ranges or anything like that. But for whatever reason, Tom and then I forget the other guy's name. I'm sorry.
Mark,
But and
Travis.
yeah. So when Travis is the drummer, right?
Yeah, I think it's Travis and Mark is the singer.
Yeah, Mark and Tom are the singers, and then Travis Barker is the drummer. Yeah, but and by themselves are like, but when you put them together, it's this weird, beautiful, almost like Bob Mould, sugar-esque sort of like the sum of its parts. Anyway, we can talk about that all day.
The sum of its 41 parts. Okay.
Sum 41. I got it. Yeah.
Signing off
also
now.
Not a one-hit wonder. They had another hit song too.
But did they have more than one in the top 40 is the real question. Because I can't remember if Into Deep was in the top 40 or not.
I don't know.
I don't even know if Fat Lip was in the top 40.
Fat Lip had to be. It was it was in crazy rotation on MTV, especially TRL. Yeah. TRL. I think TRL in top 40. Sort of. You know what? If Dave Holmes was here, I'd just be like, Dave, what was it? Were they?
They also had the Hell song, which I forgot about.
Yeah.
They have not had a single hit in the top 40. Their highest ranked one was Fat Lip at 66, and then still waiting. Into Deep didn't even crack the U.S. charts, which is crazy.
That's impossible.
No, according
That's crazy to me.
Well, this is according to Wikipedia, so take with that what you will. However, on the U.S. alternative charts, Fat Lip was number 1, Into Deep was number 10. But in the actual Billboard Top 40, which also you got to think about, punk rock doesn't generally hit the Billboard Pop Top 40 generally.
Sure, but at the time of TRL, I was always under the impression that that was such a driver that it almost seemed like the one-to-one, because you had your adult contemporary hits and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, like your Mariah Careys are gonna hit number 1 with everybody because it's Mariah Carey, or
until they hit number 2.
Yeah, but I would always say, because it's the music term industry, I don't know if they use it anymore, it's like babysitter money. Punk doesn't, obviously, but pop punk with young good-looking guys is usually is a driver. So I always sort of Total Request Live, because so much of that was driven by young girls, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, but also Sum 41 and
well, Avril Lavigne kind of shifted that mold, because very pop punk, but a lot of hits in the top 40. Skater Boy, Complicated, I'm With You, My Happy Ending, all these songs very much in the top 40 of the actual US chart. But speaking
and then when she turned up, go ahead. Segue.
No, go for it. Finish your thought, because I'm going to segue.
No, we just did segue it up.
Yeah, so I was going to say, speaking of alternative punk, a lot of hackers might listen to that. And speaking of hackers, that was my segue. It wasn't that great. But I realized that the third one had been playing and it was almost done. So I wanted to let it play so we could talk about it. But this one, again, like you said, it's tricky with hacker, because you just think of hackers as being the Jesse Eisenberg as Mark Zuckerberg in Social Network with the hoodie on and just on the computer the whole time. What else does a hacker do? They're not running down the street. But what if they were? Improv can be anything. But I love the idea. At first, this felt like it was going to be a mapping situation of the scene right before, because you're hacking. And I was like, oh, I love this whole place. It's such a great setup or whatever. But I love that we got on this whole Fresca thing, because I was like, Fresca's the drink, right? I'm pretty sure it is. And then I wasn't sure.
It is.
And then it got into this point with the Lipitor thing. And I was like, I think that's coming from a truth, the truth in comedy. And so I was like, the grapefruit thing, the elimination, that was all I was like, this is how I really feel as Spencer. And so that was fun to take this break from this idea of what would hackers talk about? And it's literally us talking about where grapefruit came from, which was pretty fun.
Because all that stuff is true. I am a big believer in using, you are you are irreplaceable in improv. If you don't bring you to the stage, we won't get it from anywhere else. And that is true. I went to a doctor a couple years ago. My great doctor, Dr. Mohammed Iqbal, could not recommend him higher. But yeah, I went in and they ran my tests and all that. It's not fun to get yelled at by your doctor. And my doctor was like, "Your cholesterol is too high. Your bad cholesterol is way up here. Your good cholesterol is way down here." And I was like, "Oh shit, okay, whatever, man. God damn." And so he put me on avorstatin, which is like any statin is basically just you know, bulk Costco, blank Lipitor, right? And that is part of the thing they tell you is that you can't have grapefruit. You can't have grapefruit soda. You can't have regular grapefruit because it does turn toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'll remember, uh, the thing I remember is when I went back and got my, my follow-up tests and all that, because I was taking it every day and, trying to eat healthier. Because he was like, you'll do this, maybe a year from now, you can have a egg, right? And of course I talked to my mom and she was like, "Oh, yours is even worse than mine." I was like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah." She was like, she was like, "Oh, it's hereditary." I was like, "Oh, when were you planning on telling me?" Here's the thing.
Yeah,
My
right?
mom's a radiological technologist. She was the head of
Wow.
radiology in my hometown hospital. "Hey, lady, when were you gonna tell me? When were you gonna give me my health thing?" So the fun thing is that I went back to him, and he was like, "Hey, your numbers are so great," and all that. And I called my mom, and she's like, "Let me know what the numbers are." And I had to take a picture of it and all that. She was like, "Oh, that's great. You did so good." I was like, "Yeah, he was so hype." And like, my dad's also disabled. He was in a car accident in '78. He's had a ton of surgeries. He walks on straight arm crutches. So like the family is very like, we aren't strangers to working with doctors. And both my parents were like, "Oh, I was like, he's gonna live off." He's like, "Your doctor loves you." You know how many doctors, like, their patients don't do what they tell them to do, don't change their diet, don't take their damn medicine. He's like, he's gonna dine out on you for like a month. He's gonna
Mm-hmm.
tell every other patient, my other patient, Brian, listened to me and his numbers went way down. You should probably like do what Brian does. And she was like, "Yeah,
Uh-huh.
doctors." She was like, "He loves you. You're his favorite patient now." I was like, "Oh, that's right." Because I'm so used to just doing what doctors say to do because we're a medical family. My dad's
Uh-huh.
disabled. My mom works in radiology. It's just like, yeah, you do the shit that people tell you to do. Like,
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Oh, that's right. Oh, I forgot that heart disease and obesity and high cholesterol and high blood pressure and everything else is a nightmare in this country because people don't do that."
Mm-hmm.
Tangent over. Anyhow,
Yeah, I was just
what
say
are we
I'm
doing now?
surprising you now because last time we
Oh
did a
shit!
scene, and so I'm gonna bring this one back and see if we remember what the choices were for this. I know the suggestion
I don't
was
remember. I
wine.
don't remember shit about this.
Suggestion was wine cellar. That's what I do remember.
Oh
Um,
yes, we're married. Yeah, and I'm down
yeah,
there, and we're stuck in the wine cellar.
and
It's our
I want to
anniversary. It's
know.
our it's our seventh anniversary,
Yes,
if I
which I was going to
remember
point out.
correctly.
It's this thing in improv where you have to like know people. You can't just like be like, oh, first dates are one thing, but like if you actually know the person, the relationship is already there. You don't have to establish the
Yeah.
relationship. So the 7 years thing, it's not like this is our 1 year, it's our 5 year. 7 years is such a specific thing that it actually helps tell the story. But I remember you telling me something about, I think we're still talking before we actually pick the suggestion here. Let me see if I can
Mm.
scrub a little bit more to the suggestion. So
Once I
I
do this,
remember,
we're in character. There it is.
yeah, right. So I remember you telling me something though, actually before this, because I think I had initiated the dialogue, but oh yeah, this was the
Mhm.
part. So what were you thinking here when I said suggestion is wine cellar? Did you have a specific idea, or what was your thought? Because you were doing a lot more of the like looking at wines right away.
Yeah, we did. This is a combination because, like, yeah, I agree with you that I love the idea of like, first dates are great, but also like you have to do more, and that's a big thing that was, obviously Miles is my mentor, but I've been fortunate enough to have many great mentors and great teachers in improv. Uh, that's a big thing for Kaki. Crick Kikowski is always like, choose to know the other person,
Hmm.
make the choice to know the other person, and that's Kaki. You're going to disagree with him, probably arguably the most agreed upon improviser on the planet. If you don't like the way that Kaki plays, I don't trust you. You know what I mean? But also Paul Valencourt's thing of like, something he taught me, which is like, choose to know the other person. Your character should know the other character across from you longer than 6 months, but less than 6 years, so that there's still room to grow. There's a shared comfortability and there's a shared language, but
Mhm.
there's still room for exploration. And then I talk about this after our scene as well, if I remember correctly. In that moment, I'm doing two things. The last time I was in a wine cellar was in my cousin Bob Pillin, who is my mom's sister's oldest, and he is very successful. He lives in Chicago, and he doesn't have a lot of vices, but his one thing is he does enjoy good wine, and his wine cellar is no joke. Uh, so that was me visualizing. I have a picture on Facebook, I think, of me in his wine cellar,
I have to go
just
find it
like,
now.
oh yeah, I used it as my not my profile picture, but like the
The
whatever
cover
the other one is.
photo.
Yeah, the cover. Yeah, I use it as my cover photo for a long time. So if you just go cover photos, it's in that. So I immediately imagined one that I actually knew, and then I was doing the thing which I think that I described afterwards, which is the Eric Honeycutt start, which is
Hmm.
it's impossible to have a bad scene with Eric Honeycutt, especially if he initiates, because he will look at something and center himself and give himself an environment. He'll check in with you. If you start something, he'll build off it, which is you did. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I got us stuck down here. I know this isn't what we wanted for anniversary. I'm like, okay, great. But if you hadn't said anything, Eric, the way that Honeycutt would have did it, Honeycutt would like looked at you. Oh, you've got nothing? Or I'm going to recenter myself. I don't know. I respectfully disagree. I think you look great at red, because that's how Honeycutt does it.
Hmm.
I don't know. Non combative. I respectfully disagree means that we've been having a conversation that's been entering for a while, because Honeycutt's big thing is every improv scene should look like the scene's been going on for 5 minutes and we're just now raising the curtain that the audience can see.
Hmm.
Again, I think Honeycutt's one of the best we have as far as like teaching, but also directing actors. He's a viewpoints guy as well. He's one of the few guys that's allowed to teach the Steppenwolf, viewpoint stuff as well as that. And then also non-combative. I respectfully disagree. I think you look great in red. Compliment. It's impossible to have a bad scene with that guy. So
Hmm.
that was me starting, and I'm almost kind of doing, as you can see here, I'm doing an impression of this is a very Eric Honeycutt woman character. Why would you say that? Is there something wrong with me? Okay. Well, I'm just saying. I don't know.
So even on that's something maybe we can,
The moon is beautiful.
yeah,
Like,
quickly mention is I guess like gender in improv is a big thing, because a lot of times people think because it's comedy you want to go these super heavy stereotypes, because it's like ha ha ha, but it's actually depending on the scenario, unless that's like you're doing
mhm.
it for a point, it can be a little off-putting, a little whatever. So I guess when in this situation, what is a technique like? I called you Deborah, I think is what the character's name was. When I
Yeah.
gifted you a character's name, and you're like, okay, Deborah, I'm playing a woman, whatever. What is like a tip or a technique that you would use if you end up playing a gender that you don't necessarily um, are?
Yeah, yeah. It has to come from a place of authenticity, and it has to come from a place of love. And the easiest way to do that is to like play play your friends.